Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
Major presidential hopefuls, Lee Jae-myung of the DP, Kim Moon-soo of the PPP, and Lee Jun-seok of the Reform Party continued their campaigns today in the conservative strong Southeast with their own visions for the economy, science, and technology, among others. Officials from around the world gather on Korea's Jeju Island in preparation for the upcoming APEC summit in Gyeongju, hoping to address some of the world's pressing challenges. This time, the APEC Trade Ministers meeting is in the spotlight, with the presence of America's trade chief. A state-run think tank cuts the local growth outlook in half to 0.8% for this year, raising fresh alarms over fears of a recession as Korea struggles with challenges both at home and abroad. It's May 14th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We're now counting down 20 days to the June 3rd snap election. The Liberal Party contender Lee Jae-myung today headed to Busan and Gyeongsang-do province, continuing his efforts to reach out to voters beyond those leaning liberal. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung began his Wednesday campaign in Busan. He first paid tribute at the UN Memorial Cemetery there that honors fallen soldiers who fought and died under the United Nations flag during the Korean War. He said he is giving his all to win and urged everyone to vote, saying the future of the country was on the line.
Our goal is not a landslide, but it's to win, no matter what. While some are optimistic, we expect the race to be very close.
To boost Busan's local economy, Lee pledged to move the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries and the country's largest shipping carrier to Busan.
I don't make impossible promises. I will move the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries to Busan. I'll also make sure HMM, the largest shipping company in Korea, moves here.
Lee's visit to Busan is part of his campaign across the southern regions, traditionally considered conservative strongholds, as he aims to win more support there than in the last election. After Busan, he visited Changwon in Gyeongsang-do province. There, he emphasized national unity, saying the upcoming election isn't just about choosing a president. It's about people's lives, their future, and the direction of the country. He also said that both the party and he himself are ready to serve as tools for the people, asking for their support. Lee then headed to Gyeongsang, a major hub of the shipbuilding industry. Ahead of the visit, Lee announced his shipbuilding policy, pledging to strengthen South Korea's position as a maritime powerhouse through what he called K-shipbuilding. In a social media post, Lee said he aims to make Korea a leader in the global market for smart and eco-friendly ships, while also developing special ships and ship maintenance as new growth engines. He also promised support for developing green fuel-powered ships and digitalizing the entire shipbuilding process. Lee decided to continue his campaign on Thursday in Jeollanam-do province and will visit Gwangyang, Yeosu, and Suncheon. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The conservative camp's contender remained in the southeastern part of the country as well. People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo focused on his pledges for fostering science and technology. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
For the third straight day on Wednesday, People Power Party's presidential candidate Kim Moon-soo campaigned in the Gyeongsang-do region, hitting cities in Gyeongsang-do province to be exact. As the cities in the province are specialized in their own industries with a focus on science and tech, as he visited Korea Aerospace Administration in Sacheon, he pledged better investment in the science sector with more administrative power by creating Deputy Prime Minister for Science and Tech.
Why do we need a deputy prime minister for science? It's because it shows the nation's will, which means budget and power, and this is the only way to yield results. Anything said other than this doesn't matter.
Kim Moon-soo says without science and technology, there is no future, adding that while it may not bring in votes, any leader who cares about Korea's long-term growth must invest heavily in the field. He also revealed his pledge on science and research, which included measures to support research and development in general. But one aspect that stood out was his pledge to send a man to the moon in 2032 and have a Mars rover project by 2045. Also during his visit to Busan and ability in Changwon, Kim praised the company's resilience through Korea's nuclear phase-out and pledged full support if elected president, especially in advancing SMR technology and leaving politics out of industries. Busan is a company for the Czech Republic's Dukovany power plant project. Kim is now expected to wrap up his first extended visit to a region and return to the capital region. To wrap up, Kim started off in Seoul, then went southward, stopping by Daejeon and ending up in Daegu on the first day. For day 2, he started in Daegu, then went to Ulsan and ended in Busan, all major metropolitan cities, and did his tours around Gyeongsang-do province. This region is typically known as a conservative stronghold. For reference, throughout the Gyeongsang-do region, there are 65 congressional districts, and during last year's general election, only 6 parliamentary seats were won by the liberal side. That said, a lot has happened since the general election, and Kim could be trying to solidify his supporter base first, then head to other regions. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok moved south to the port city of Busan, promising a brighter economic future. He has focused exclusively on the conservative city of Daegu on Tuesday and Busan on Wednesday. Speaking with reporters, Lee pledged to push ahead with the construction of the new international airport on Jeju Island and a new baseball stadium. The candidate also visited Busan National University for lunch, continuing his campus cafeteria outreach that began at Gyeongbuk National University in Daegu the day before. Lee is scheduled to visit other universities in Busan, targeting younger voters. In other news, a local think tank has cut its growth forecast for the local economy in half for this year, with the rate landing in the 0% range. It's taken as a stern warning. Moon Ji-young covers its latest cut and its reasons.
The Korea Development Institute gave a grim economic outlook for South Korea on Wednesday, citing trade uncertainty stemming from tariff and weak domestic demand. Data from the KDI showed it expects the Korean economy to grow just 0.8% this year. That figure is exactly half its 1.6% forecast made only 3 months ago in February. The KDI added that of the 0.8% downward adjustment, external shocks contributed about 0.5 percentage points, and internal shocks contributed 0.3 percentage points.
The biggest factor for this adjustment is the U.S. tariff increase. The U.S. tariff hikes became full-fledged from April. And on top of that, the uncertainty regarding tariff policy has also significantly increased. These factors are having a negative impact on our exports. And we believe this is also partially spilling over negatively into domestic demand.
While the forecast was based on the assumptions that the 90-day suspension of reciprocal tariff would continue, the growth outlook could be adjusted further downward if upcoming negotiations fall through or the suspension ends. The think tank said that despite robust trip shipments, overall exports are slowing and conditions may further weaken if the U.S. raises tariffs. Internally, domestic demand is recovering only slowly due to contracted consumer sentiment, driven by political turmoil as well as the mounting external uncertainties. Private consumption is slowing, especially in the services industry, including accommodation and restaurants. The think tank forecasts that consumer prices will rise by 1.7% this year due to the economic slowdown and falling international oil prices. Other key factors include the sluggish construction industry and weak corporate investment sentiment. The KDI highlighted the need to ease monetary policy to respond to a potential economic slowdown caused by growing uncertainties at home and abroad. 문지영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the local labor market saw employment expand in April, but the expansion remains uneven between age groups as well as by industry. Lee Soo-jin has the details.
South Korea's job market continued to grow in April, with job additions posting growth for a fourth consecutive month, but employment of young people and certain sectors continued to face challenges. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday showed that the number of employed people aged 15 or older stood at 28.9 million last month, up 194,000 from a year earlier. This marks a gain in the 100,000 range starting from January, after employment figures showed a decline in December. The growth in April was led by job additions in healthcare and social welfare, as well as scientific and technical services. But employment in manufacturing, a key pillar of South Korea's job market, continued to face headwinds. The sector saw job additions drop by more than 120,000, the biggest drop since February 2019, also extending a negative growth for 10 straight months.
Manufacturing employment is weakening further amid sluggish domestic demand and growing external uncertainties.
And construction employment also remains sluggish, falling by 150,000, marking a 12th consecutive month of declines since May last year. By age, employment growth was seen only in those aged 60 and above and 30 and above. And all other age groups saw declines, with those in their 20s posting the sharpest drop.
To address the sharp decline in the employment of young people, stronger fiscal support through a supplementary budget is needed, along with labor reforms to spur corporate investment.
He added that he believes that the risk of job losses remains due to sluggish domestic demand and declining exports. The government, in a ministerial economic meeting headed by the country's acting finance minister on Wednesday, acknowledged ongoing job declines in key industries amid tariff-related uncertainties and pledged to swiftly execute a supplementary budget. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, two men, surnamed So and Kim, have been sentenced to a year and a half in prison, respectively, after attacking the Seoul Western District Court in January. They were also found guilty of throwing bricks and storming the court building. The offenses happened after the court issued an arrest warrant for former President Yoon Suk-yeol over insurrection charges. On Wednesday, judges said the crimes were committed because of their obsession with what they believed was a political plot behind the arrest warrant being issued by the judiciary. Out of around 90 people currently facing trial on similar charges, these two were the first to get prison sentences. U.S. President Donald Trump chose the Middle East as the destination for his first major foreign trip since re-entering the White House, where he said sanctions on Syria will be lifted. Park Go-nu has more.
The more than a decade-long U.S. sanctions on Syria to pressure the country's former dictatorship are set to be lifted. That was announced by U.S. President Donald Trump in a speech made at an investment forum held in Riyadh during his 4-day visit to the Gulf, Trump's first international trip since his return to the Oval Office.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Trump said he made the move at the request of Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, while saying U.S. measures against Syria had now fulfilled their purpose. Syria had been urging the U.S. to lift sanctions since last December, following the ousting of its former dictator. Syria's Foreign Minister Assad al-Shaibani called Trump's decision a pivotal turning point as Syria enters a phase of reconstruction after years of war. Trump is expected to meet with Syria's interim leader Ahmed al-Shara on Wednesday, while U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will hold talks with Syria's foreign minister in Turkey later this week. On Tuesday, Trump called Iran the most destructive force in the Middle East, vowing it would never be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Trump also said he remains open to diplomacy with Tehran, saying he is not just condemning Iran's previous choices.
I want to make a deal with Iran, but if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before.
Also on Tuesday at the U.S.-Saudi Investment Forum, Saudi Arabia announced an investment of $600 billion in the United States. The agreement includes an arms deal worth nearly $142 billion, which the White House called the largest defense cooperation deal Washington has ever done, as well as other technology partnerships. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is headed to Türkiye for peace talks with Russia, insisting that the talks must involve his Russian counterpart, Putin. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy left for Ankara on Tuesday in hopes of getting a ceasefire agreement with Moscow. However, the Ukrainian president said that he would be going to Istanbul, where Thursday's talks will be held, if Russian President Vladimir Putin attends the talks himself, as he called on the Russian leader to come to the negotiation talks.
We will wait for the meeting with Putin in Türkiye. If Putin is ready to meet, not only for media purposes, but in real life, then on the level of leaders, we will do everything to agree on a ceasefire, because I must reach a deal about a ceasefire with him, because he is the only person to decide.
Over on the U.S. side, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be headed to Istanbul, along with the U.S. Special Envoys for the Middle East and Ukraine, Steve Witkoff and Keith Kellogg. The U.S. officials will look to broker a ceasefire deal, hoping Moscow will agree to a comprehensive 30-day ceasefire agreement. According to Washington, Kyiv has already agreed to such a deal. While Russian officials will be taking part in the negotiation talks in Istanbul, the Kremlin has remained silent on who's going to represent their side at the talks. According to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, Russia is continuing its preparations for the upcoming talks, but remain tight-lipped on whether its leader will be traveling to Türkiye as well. The U.S., Russia, and Ukraine will meet in Istanbul on Thursday to discuss a ceasefire for the over 3-year-long war. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea is projected to have 50 intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads by the year 2035. According to the latest report by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, Pyongyang has successfully tested ballistic missiles with sufficient range to reach the entire U.S. territory. For now, North Korea is assumed to have fewer than 10 ICBMs, but the agency expects the regime to produce around 40 more over the next 10 years. Preparations are underway for the APEC summit in Korea this October, as a meeting takes place in the country involving senior APEC officials, this time with a focus on raising funds for young people. Another agenda will include seeking ways to keep trade open, with the presence of America's trade chief. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Yoon-ji has this report.
Member economies of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation have unanimously approved to establish a fund aimed at supporting and empowering young people. This was agreed upon during a 2-week-long senior officials meeting in South Korea, which will be held up until this Friday.
More than 3,000 officials from APEC member states have gathered here at the southern resort island of Jeju for the second senior officials meeting and other related meetings, as South Korea gears up to successfully host the APEC summit later this year.
This idea of a future youth fund was earlier proposed by South Korea last November at the APEC summit in Peru. The Korean government announced Wednesday that it plans to provide an initial contribution of $1 million.
As this year's host, we played an active role in the second senior officials meeting and other various ministerial meetings to overcome mutual challenges and come up with meaningful outcomes.
This comes after South Korea earlier revealed that it hopes to focus on two key agenda items at this year's APEC summit: artificial intelligence and demographic changes led by aging populations. And from Thursday to Friday, the APEC Trade Ministers meeting is set to take place in Jeju. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who plays a key role in shaping the Trump administration's tariff policy, is expected to be there. The executive director of APEC said the officials will discuss ways to keep trade open and integrate digital tools such as AI into trade facilitation.
And this is why tomorrow's meeting of the ministers responsible for trade is so important. As executive director of the APEC Secretariat, I've seen firsthand how challenging these times are, but I've also seen how APEC continues to serve as a space for economies to work together, even when views differ.
배은지, Arirang News, Jeju.
On the cultural front, an opera entirely in English, planned and produced by the state-run Seoul Arts Center, will premiere on May 25th, that is next Sunday, to offer the audience a performance that beautifully blends Korean and Western elements. Our Lee Yoon-hee has more.
This May, SAC will debut its first ever original opera, The Rising World, Spirit of Water. Blending traditional Korean themes with a modern twist, the English language production marks a major milestone created entirely in-house from story to music. The opera tells the story of a princess captivated by a water spirit and a female artisan who builds a water clock to save a kingdom plagued by constant water disasters. The cast features internationally acclaimed opera singers, including South Korean soprano Hwang Soo-mi as the princess and mezzo-soprano Kim Jung-mi as the artisan.
I would say that the work portrays a human being, regardless of gender, who engages with nature, particularly through the element we call water. It explores the relationship between humanity and nature.
The element of water is expressed in many ways throughout the music. The opera's composer, Australian Mary Finster, explains that while you might hear it through electroacoustic sounds or a special instrument called a waterphone, the feeling of water mostly comes through the orchestra's instrumentation and the flowing ornamentation in the vocal lines. The show will have its world premiere at the Seoul Arts Center's Opera House on May 25th, followed by performances on May 29th and 31st. The creative team boasts international talent, including conductor Stephen Osgood, praised for his work at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, leading the Korean National Symphony Orchestra.
It's our window into the imagination of the composer and the librettist. I get pages, hundreds of pages of music. But what it is on the page is dots of ink.
Those pages, filled with countless notes, are a world the conductor steps into. He waters it and breathes life into it so the music can finally reach our ears. Now it's the audience's turn to step into that imagined world and fully experience an opera like a powerful fairy tale, one that flows with a message we can all feel. Lee Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
was another very hot day, but for tomorrow we'll see a change as rain is expected across the country, which should bring a break from the recent summer-like temperatures. And about the rain, the capital area in Gangwon-do province could see 5 to 20 millimeters. The rest of the country could see 5 to 10 from the dawn into the afternoon. Checking on tomorrow's temperatures now, most parts begin the day in the mid-teens at 16 degrees Celsius in the capital, Chuncheon, Busan at 15 degrees. Then afternoon highs will be 2 to 7 degrees lower tomorrow, getting up to 19 degrees here in Seoul, warmer in Gyeongju at 24 degrees. Then we are looking at another chance of rain for the southern regions in Jeju Island on Friday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
제21대 대통령 재외선거.
세계 어느 곳에 있어도
내가 국가대표라는 마음으로
누구보다 땀 흘리죠. 지금이 국가대표임을
보여줄 기회.
대한민국 국민의 권리.
대한민국 국민의 의무.
반드시
투표합니다. 국가를 위한 대통령 투표. 제21대 대통령 재외선거. 중앙선거관리위원회.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
바래버린 하얀 소나타를 매일 습관처럼 되뇌이며 살고 싶어. 가자.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. As the world watches new fault lines emerge between global powers, the Korean peninsula is no longer just reacting to regional tensions, it's actively reshaping them. From North Korea's open military support for Russia in Ukraine to the first diplomatic appearance of Kim Jong-un's daughter, Kim Joo-ae, Pyongyang is sending deliberate signals about its strategic intent and succession. At the same time, Russia and China are aligning more openly with North Korea politically, militarily, and diplomatically, challenging Western pressure and sanctions. And all of this comes just weeks before South Korea decides on its next leadership under the shadow of a rapidly shifting security order. For a closer look into the moving dynamics, we are joined in the studio by Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us online is Frank Januzzi, President and CEO of the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Great to see you again.
Good evening.
So let's start a discussion with Dr. Go. On Russia's Victory Day, May 9th, Chairman Kim Jong-un paid a visit to Russian embassy in North Korea and said that if Ukraine is left unattended, South Korea might also grow recklessly brave. What do you think is the underlying message, he's aiming to project both to domestically and also to the international audiences?
Well, I think it's all about emphasizing the alignment, the strategic alignment that both countries, Russia and North Korea, are pursuing right now. And essentially what Kim Jong-un is doing, both internationally and domestically, is a justification for North Korea's participation in the Ukraine war. So we know that North Korea and Russia both denied or tried to hide the fact that North Korea had a very significant military presence in in Russia, fighting against the Ukrainian forces, and at the same time, this I think created some burden and potential for criticism internationally for, especially against Russia, because Russia was bringing in North Korea, a rogue state, under sanctions by the United Nations for developing weapons of mass destruction to essentially broaden the war, and I think that's the reason why North Korea's intervention was hidden or denied for a considerable amount of time. But now we know that both Russia and North Korea are making North Korea's participation official. So now there's a necessity to come up with a rationalization for North Korea's role. And essentially, North Korea is depicting their role in the war in Ukraine mostly as a defensive, saying that there's a tension, and Russia is fighting Ukraine, and then Kim Jong-un is describing this war that Russia is engaged in against Ukraine as a part of a broader confrontation that North Korea is also a player in, which is a global confrontation between the authoritarian axis, such as Russia, North Korea, China, and Iran, against the global liberal states, the Western Europe, United States, Canada, and other countries in the world, so including Korea. So I think this is a message that essentially it's a political message to justify North Korea's military role that we see today.
Right. Then building on that justification, Dr. Go, Kim Jong-un has also said that their troop deployment fulfills obligations under the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership with Russia, reinforcing the image of a formal alliance. Why do you think he's putting spotlight to this right now?
Oh, well, so the reason is because if we see the language, read the language of this Comprehensive Partnership Pact, there's some clause about mutual assistance in case of conflict. So both Russia and North Korea, they essentially promise or commit to helping each other in case of conflict that breaks out and that affects one of the signatories' country. So in this case, North Korea is helping Russia, especially in the region of Kursk. So I think this is very noteworthy because North Koreans are not fighting in Ukraine proper or like in the Ukraine territories that are under Russian occupation, at least not officially yet. But when it comes to Kursk, which is original Russian territory that the Ukrainians invaded in order to burden the front and then essentially divert the resources that the Russians are putting to pressure on Ukrainian forces in Ukraine proper. So in that sense, in a way, it is completely legal for North Korea under this pact to assist Russians in Kursk because Kursk is on Russian territory. So there should be no controversy about North Korean intervention in this war. So I think this is the reason why the North Koreans are highlighting this fact. So this is a defensive warfare that North Korea is essentially doing, like living up to its obligation as a signatory to this pact because Russia is under threat.
Right, so it's circling back to their stance that they're defending themselves. Now, beyond strategic rhetoric, the optics of the visit also stood out. Kim has been accompanied by his daughter Kim Joo-ae, marking her first appearance at an official diplomatic event. Mr. Januzzi, do you think this could signal a stronger establishment of her role as Kim Jong-un's successor? And also, why do you think Pyongyang chose this moment, again, in front of the Russian diplomatic corps for her debut?
Well, it may well signal an enhanced role for Kim Joo-ae in the future. As to succession, I think it's really too soon to say. But what I'm most struck by her appearance is that governing North Korea in today's world under Kim Jong-un is really a family business. And this is a marked contrast to the way that his grandfather or even his father ran the DPRK. And by bringing Kim Joo-ae into the inner circle, by showcasing her now on the world stage, he is undoubtedly signaling that she will be a player for years to come, whether as his successor, I think too soon to say. But remember that it is quite rare for women to assume senior ranks in the North Korean government. Only Choi Song-hui, the foreign minister, is a woman among the top ranks of the North Korean government. But now she's being joined essentially by Kim Joo-ae. And I think that this means that what is most important for Kim Jong-un is not the gender of his successor, but the bloodline. Kim Joo-ae qualifies to be a successor because she is Kim Jong-un's daughter. But as to whether they've made that decision, I'm skeptical. I think what's most important here, however, is that you see Kim Joo-ae maturing on the global stage and clearly rising in the ranks as an advisor to her father, even on policy matters. And I think that that's a sign of her maturation and her growth on the global stage.
Right. So indeed, Joo-ae's appearance wasn't just symbolic. It may be laying the groundwork for, future presence, her presence in the future. Now, meanwhile, Dr. Go, Kim's recent flurry of on-site inspections on multiple super large, multiple rocket launchers has drawn attention, especially because these systems could, resemble nuclear capabilities as well. Do you think these developments would be aimed at Russia as part of, arms cooperation? And also, how far do you see North Korea-Russia's military cooperation expanding?
Well, I think the North Korean-Russian military cooperation is expanding very fast and, very broadly speaking, in many different types. Weapon systems are being developed right now with Russia's assistance. We are seeing the fruits of the cooperation right now. So the recently unveiled so-called super large multiple launch rocket system might be a product of a Russian technological transfer, but then it's more likely that it represents more of a indigenous effort on the part of North Korea. But there are other systems that North Koreans have reviewed in recent days that are clearly indicate that there's a Russia's helping hand behind it, such as the airborne warning and the control system, AWACS, the plane that has a big radar on top of the plane, and we have seen this in the TV footage recently, as well as the recently unveiled guided missile destroyer Chehyun. These are all systems that the North Koreans can neither afford or able to develop on their own. So clearly, Russians are essentially. It's clear that the Russians are transferring technology and even some weapons themselves as a compensation for or reward for North Korea's assistance in the war in Ukraine. Having said that, though, I think the reason why we are seeing this flurry of showcasing of new weapon systems, revelations, is because North Korea is completing or reaching the 5-year term of their so-called 5-year military modernization plan. So by next year, it's likely that North Koreans are going to have another party congress where they have to review their achievements in the previous 5 years. And because the last time in the January 2021, they had the 8th Party Congress, Kim Jong-un had promised to achieve a very high level of military development. So now that they are nearing another Party Congress date, I think Kim Jong-un is creating essentially a ground to credit himself for all these major achievements that I think in a way happened only because the Russians are helping North Korea, and then Russians are helping North Korea because Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Had Russia not done so, then it's likely that North Korea wouldn't have achieved this high level of military development.
Right, so the latest achievement is largely helped by Russian support. Now, and this cooperation, of course, is very visible and also concerning. Now, after months of denial, Russia has now actually begun publicly showcasing footage of North Korean troops engaged in military operations as well. Mr. Januzzi, what do you think is driving this sudden openness and also a sort of a promotion of bilateral military ties?
Well, thanks for the question. This is very clearly an orchestrated move by both Russia and North Korea working together to celebrate this alliance. But they probably kept quiet as long as they did because of uncertainties about how things would play out on the battlefield. The success of Russia and North Korean forces driving Ukrainians out of the Kursk region in Russia now gives them an opportunity to celebrate the role of North Korean forces, which was, I think, in the end, quite significant in terms of providing additional manpower to Russia at a time when they really were strapped. And I think that one of the most important elements of this is Putin's obvious gratitude to Kim Jong-un for providing the manpower as well as weaponry that helped Russia to recapture a large swath of territory which had been taken by Ukrainian forces. This has improved Russia's position in the negotiating table as well as on the battlefield. And this North Korean-Russian axis, if you will, is now ready, I think, to go global. They are willing to celebrate it, to announce it to the world. It also gives Kim Jong-un the thanks that he needs from a grateful Russia to explain to his own people and to the extent necessary, the military, the cost of this intervention, because there have been, in all likelihood, thousands of North Korean soldiers wounded in combat. And Kim Jong-un needs to show something for it. And what he's getting is support from Russia on the global stage, support for sanctions relief, military support, as Dr. Go has outlined, and now also a political pat on the back.
Right, so Russia is definitely moving from denial to display, and this would mark a significant shift in how both nations want the world to see their alignment. Now, so on the heels of this publicity, Dr. Go, there's been new satellite analysis that major upgrades are underway at North Korea's Cheongjin port, and Kim Jong-un has been seen inspecting a new warship matching the size of a recently launched Chehyun-ho destroyer. What's the strategic aim behind this accelerated naval buildup?
So I don't see any clear strategic aim or benefit that North Koreans can derive from this naval buildup. For North Korea to in order for North Korea to catch up with the naval capability of just not only like the allies of the United States, such as Japan and the United States as well, but later on to catch up with the naval capability of South Korea alone will take decades. And just having a brand new guided missile destroyer, such as Cheon, is not going to be enough. They will at least build 2 more in order to have a significant presence in the seas bordering the Korean Peninsula. So in that sense, I think this is strategically speaking, it's a mistake on the part of North Korea because guided missile destroyers such as the one that North Korea has showcased is very expensive to build and also even more expensive to maintain. So I think the only reason why North Koreans are developing this is not a precondition for dialogue or either with South Korea or the United States. This is just a political, it's a way for Kim Jong-un to claim political credit. As I outlined before, Kim Jong-un wants to celebrate another success, quote unquote, by revealing a brand new weapon system, which North Korea likely got from, the technology itself. They probably received it from Russia. So this is there's no major long-lasting military significance from this kind of naval buildup. But on the other hand, if North Koreans are indeed committed to develop an ocean-going navy from present to the future, they could do so. But then but it's a very risky option for North Korea because they could possibly go bankrupt economically by investing so much in their naval capability. So in that sense, I think this likely constitutes a one-time event for North Korea, so that again to essentially celebrate the Kim Jong-un's achievement.
Right, so a show of political strength domestically.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, so this military assertiveness is also being backed diplomatic. On May 8th, Presidents Putin and Xi Jinping issued a joint statement urging to end sanctions and pressure on North Korea. Now, Mr. Januzzi, considering China's previously more restrained stance, what explains this recent diplomatic alignment?
Well, I believe that Beijing is essentially bowing to reality. Russia has clearly decided to ignore UN sanctions restricting arms support for North Korea and all forms of economic engagement with North Korea. And faced with that reality and risking losing much of their influence over Pyongyang, if Russia were able to essentially replace China as North Korea's chief patron. Now, the Chinese have made a pragmatic shift. They've long been skeptical of the efficacy of sanctions on North Korea in terms of bringing North Korea to the bargaining table, but they're now choosing to publicly align themselves with Russia and North Korea in a call for sanctions relief. I think that we must not overlook the influence of Donald Trump's election in the United States on this decision as well. President Trump has indicated his desire to engage in diplomacy with North Korea. I think setting the stage for that diplomatically, Russia and China are wishing to show deep solidarity with North Korea so as to empower the North Koreans to strike a hard bargaining position if and when Kim Jong-un sits down again with President Trump. So you see a strengthening of the Russia, China, North Korean alignment, even at a time when U.S. alliance management with both South Korea and Japan has been complicated by the demands of the Trump administration on its allies to do more, as well as the president's own expressed dissatisfaction with the asymmetries involved in the U.S. security commitments to both Japan and South Korea. So it's China being pragmatic, but also China wishing to set the stage potentially for diplomacy between North Korea and the United States that might see a reduction of tension and a reduction of North Korea's isolation on the global stage.
Right. So taken together, this North Korea, China, Russia front seems to be becoming harder to dismiss, and it seems like a deeper cooperation moving forward. Now, finally, to Dr. Go, South Korea's presidential election, of course, is now less than 3 weeks away, and amid this shifting regional dynamics, what do you think the next incoming administration should prioritize in shaping its foreign policies?
Well, I think the priority will be for the next administration to recognize that the North Korea issue has become internationalized. There's a tendency in South Korea to view North Korea, our relations with North Korea, as a so-called inter-Korean relations framework. So obviously, dialogue between the two Koreas falls under the inter-Korean relations category, but the repercussions of what North Korea is doing is global in scope right now. So not just in the North Korea's quest to become a nuclear state, but also what we are seeing in Russia. North Korea's conventional capabilities also now has global implications. So in that sense, we need to view North Korea in the not just in the peninsular context, but also the regional context at the very least. So that means that we have to pay a very close attention to what North Korea is doing in Russia, as well as the alignment that we are seeing beyond these two countries, Russia and North Korea, but also with China. So, and then that means that when China is going to have an issue with the United States, especially when it comes to the interstate relations, what I mean is what we refer as interstate relations, the relationship between China and Taiwan, and the potential conflict between the two major powers over Taiwan, it's going to have peninsular implications. So these are all these factors that we have to take into consideration as we formulate our new North Korea policy. So I think this is it's a must priority. The second priority is our relations and also as our stance towards China. I think also President Trump's administration formulates a more systematic China policy. I think the United States is going to assign or ask South Korea to have a more prominent role in the regional security affairs. And that probably means that we have to have some sort of a clear stance regarding China. I think because the linkage between China and North Korea, we have to link North Korea with China. So we should view China not in isolation, but in the regional context. So this systematic integration of our regional policy is going to be top priority for the next South Korean administration.
Right, so accepting that this issue is not only just for South Korea, we need to take into consideration reactions from key players would be very important for the next administration. Right, and we will take close tabs on that front, and we will have to end our discussion right here for today. Dr. Go, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also, Mr. Jinuji, thank you for making time for us tonight.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.